Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, a dangerous cold snap that's reaching into tomorrow.
A blinding snowstorm blamed for a massive car and truck chain reaction crash in Michigan. Whiteout conditions making travel treacherous. I'm Stephanie Ramos reporting from New York with how commuters are handling this wintry blast.
And this cold snap is far from over. We're going to see temperatures and wind chills in the single digits across parts of the Northeast as we start our Tuesday. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z, and I'll be covering it all.
President Trump blames his pursuit of Greenland partially on not winning the Nobel Peace Prize. His message to Norway's prime minister saying he no longer feels obliged to, quote, think purely of peace. Tonight, 1,500 active duty U.S. troops from Alaska are now on standby for possible deployment to Minneapolis should President Trump invoke the Insurrection Act against the ICE protesters. Demonstrators carry on interrupting a church service where the pastor is also an ICE official. The Justice Department is now investigating protesters. A deadly disaster in Spain. Two high-speed trains collide, killing at least 39 people and injuring nearly 150 more. What we know about what went wrong. Style, class, an icon of the fashion world. Legendary designer Valentino has died. Tonight we look back at his designs, his trademark gowns worn by the likes of Jackie Kennedy, Julia Roberts, and Princess Diana. And on this Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, we honor a little-known civil rights era story. He's known as the youngest freedom rider, arrested at 13 years old for walking through the whites-only front door of a bus station. Now he's passing down history as a civil rights museum guide.
I never get tired of telling the story. The students that come through the museum don't get it. They don't get it at home, and they don't get it in the schoolhouse.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. This Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we talked to his daughter, Reverend Dr. Bernice King, in a few minutes about the status of her father's dream, his Nobel Peace Prize, and President Trump's recent comments that the Civil Rights Act led to white people being, quote, very badly treated. But first, we do begin with the dangerous Arctic blast sweeping across the country. Take a look at this massive 100-car pileup just outside Grand Rapids, Michigan. Roughly a dozen people were injured, and it goes without saying, but in this type of weather, the most ideal place to be is at home or somewhere off the roads. This was a scene in Indiana. Cars and trucks collided and skidded off the highway. And tonight, drivers are facing blinding whiteout conditions from the Dakotas to Michigan. A United flight from Chicago to Orlando had to make such a hard landing in strong winds, the front tire fell off, and passengers were forced to deplane right there on the runway. And this bone-chilling cold is heading east. Ginger Z will have the forecast in a moment. But first, Stephanie Ramos leads us off with the latest images coming in.
Tonight, the harrowing scene in a blinding snowstorm. More than 100 vehicles smashing into each other in a massive chain reaction pileup in Michigan.
It was just semi after semi, either going into the ditch, hitting each other.
The morning commute suddenly turning into a whiteout nightmare on Interstate 196 outside Grand Rapids.
It just happened so fast. It was a white wall, and we just slammed into this woman here.
Nearly a dozen people injured, including children. Drivers rushing to help each other.
We got about 100 cars.
Up to 40 tractor trailers involved.
We lined up numerous ambulances, numerous school buses to help us transport the stranded.
That brutal Arctic blast now sweeping east, fueling new rounds of heavy lake-effect snow. Near South Bend, Indiana, parts of the busy toll road shut down after multiple crashes. Dangerous driving in Durham, North Carolina, cars sliding out of control. Back-to-back weekend storms leading to white-knuckle driving in St. Louis, this car slamming into a guardrail. The snow and brutal cold stretching as far south as the Florida Panhandle. And in Orlando, a front tire falling off a United flight from Chicago after a hard landing in strong winds.
United Company has been advised we have a tow on the way.
200 passengers forced off onto the runway. Fortunately, no one was hurt. And Linsey, the dangerous conditions that led to this massive pileup in Michigan is expected to hammer the region all week long as this brutal Arctic blast invades the Northeast. Linsey.
Stephanie, thank you. Let's get right to ABC's chief meteorologist, Ginger Z. We can tell by how bundled up you are just what the forecast might include.
Yeah, the electric vest is on, Lindsay, and it will stay on for the next couple weeks, I believe. And here's why. We've got more cold air pouring over the lakes. We've already seen more than 9 inches of snow in Walker, Michigan. That's close to Grand Rapids, my hometown, and close to where that pileup was. The bands are still flowing and will tonight, but they should subside tomorrow from Lake Michigan. It's Ontario and Erie that really turn on, and some of the winter storm warnings for the Tug Hill Plateau, places like Watertown or Oswego, could see 4-inch per hour snowfall rates. That is wild. But not wild when you see how cold this area is coming over those relatively warm lakes. Tomorrow morning, it'll feel like 8 below for Pittsburgh, 10 below for Erie, 5 for Philadelphia, New York City, up to Boston, all single digits for the wind chills. But by the afternoon, you say, okay, does the sun do any of its job and warm us up? Not much at all. We'll be lucky to feel anything more than 9 in New York City throughout the entire afternoon, 4 for Scranton, Pennsylvania. Now, tomorrow's the coldest of this week, but we have to get used to it because there's a major winter storm trying to set up from the plains all the way to the Mid-South and the Southeast, but it's going to come with even colder air by the end of the weekend and start of next week, Lindsay.
Oh, all right. Well, it is January after all. Ginger, thank you. President Trump is intensifying his threats to take control of Greenland. Now he says his pressure campaign is in part due to not winning the Nobel Peace Prize. His message to Norway's prime minister and NATO allies is that he no longer feels obliged to, quote, think purely of peace. ABC's Mary Bruce reports from the White House.
Tonight, President Trump lashing out at NATO allies as he escalates his push for Greenland, saying because he did not win the Nobel Peace Prize, he no longer feels, quote, an obligation to think purely of peace. It came after Norway's prime minister texted Trump pleading we all should work to take this down and de-escalate, proposing a phone call to talk it out. Instead, Trump texting back, Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace. Although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. He's very preoccupied with the Nobel Peace Prize, Norway's prime minister told reporters, and I've explained to him many times that it's an award given by a Norwegian committee, not by the Norwegian government. America's NATO allies rattled as Trump sounds increasingly determined to own Greenland, which has been part of the Kingdom of Denmark for more than 300 years. In Copenhagen, thousands taking to the streets, wearing Trump's signature red hats, these saying Make America Go Away. 8 NATO countries, including France, Germany, and the UK, moving forces to Greenland as a show of support. Over the weekend, Trump threatening new tariffs on those countries, 10% in February, jumping to 25% in June, until a, quote, deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland.
The use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
Our thanks to Mary Bruce. For more on the pushback against President Trump's pressure campaign to acquire and control Greenland, I want to bring in former minister and member of the Danish parliament, Ida Auken. Thank you so much for joining us. In a piece that you wrote for the New York Times, you argue that Denmark is already open to discussions to strengthen Arctic security, but that territorial claims between allies only allow our enemies to divide us. Is there any merit to Trump's claims that Greenland needs to be more secure from Russia and China?
Well, definitely, we all need to look at the Arctic as an area that is potentially dangerous. And Denmark has tried for a long time to get all of NATO to say we should do more in the Arctic. It's actually been the Americans that have been hesitating inside NATO. So we started just acting on our own. The last year, we've invested more than $14 billion in capabilities that can be used in the Arctic. So definitely we need to do more.
Let's talk about this extraordinary text message Trump sent to Norway's prime minister. President Trump brought up that he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize and that because of that, he, quote, no longer feels an obligation to think purely of peace. Curious your reaction to his comments.
Well, I think we are all reading this message with some kind of surprise or maybe just trying to figure out what's going on because it's not really a normal way of communicating with other people. It's not a normal way to do diplomacy. And, you know, we've been friends with the U.S. for so many years. I love Americans. I love the U.S., but we feel treated in a little bit of disrespectful way, to put it mildly.
We've also heard outrage from Denmark as well as other European allies in reaction to Trump's 10% tariff threat. How might they retaliate?
So tariffs are not a good weapon because they hit your own consumers. They are the ones paying the tariffs. Right now, we see Americans having a lot of problems buying groceries, buying eggs, buying all kinds of stuff. And these tariffs are just making it worse. So Europe is really thinking very hard, do we want to retaliate and put tariffs on American products? Because that's going to hit our own consumers. But we can. We have a tool in our toolbox called the bazooka. Sorry for the name. That's what it's called. And we can retaliate up to around $93 billion put on American companies. But honestly, we don't want to put our consumers through this, so it's a hard discussion for us, but we're not going to put up with everything.
As you know, several NATO countries, including Denmark, have sent troops into Greenland. Do you see ultimately the U.S. using force in order to try to take the island?
Look, I've learned one thing with Trump, and that is always to take him seriously. And of course, we are hoping for the best and preparing for everything.
Do you have a message for President Trump?
Well, Trump, we are with you. We want to be your allies. We have the same adversaries in the Arctic, Russia mainly, but also China. We are investing. You got your win. Let's work together instead of threatening each other. It's really making all of the West less strong. We should be together and not fighting each other. I'm sure that Putin and Xi are just looking at us right now with a small smile on their face, and we shouldn't be doing this.
Ida Auken, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining us. Mm-hmm. Tonight, 1,500 active duty U.S. troops are on standby for possible deployment into Minneapolis in case President Trump invokes the Insurrection Act against ICE protesters. Meanwhile, demonstrations continue despite the bitter cold. ABC's Matt Rivers reports from Minneapolis again tonight.
Tonight, 1,500 active duty soldiers are on alert for possible deployment to Minnesota. Those troops just on standby for now. But the city of Minneapolis remains on edge. After anti-ICE protesters disrupted this Sunday service, the Justice Department says it's now investigating. Protesters targeting the church because one of the pastors is also the director of an ICE field office. DHS says roughly 3,000 undocumented immigrants have been arrested during this crackdown in Minneapolis, including violent criminals. Agents storming this home. The family of the man living there says they terrorized his 5-year-old grandson and never asked for ID before pulling him out in his underwear into the bitter cold, releasing him an hour later. DHS says the man, a U.S. citizen, lived with 2 sex offenders they are still looking for. But his family disputes that, saying he only lives with relatives and none are sex offenders. And new tonight, allegations that some detained by ICE were denied access to legal counsel, including protester William Vermi, a U.S. citizen. Seen here being arrested after filming ICE officers right outside his house. He says he was detained for more than 8 hours and not allowed to see an attorney.
We're entitled to counsel. It's a part of the Bill of Rights, even if you're here illegally.
4 different attorneys tell ABC News they were not granted access to detained migrants, despite a constitutional obligation to allow legal counsel.
Why sit here and talk to me? Why go public?
I have privilege. I'm a combat vet. I'm white. I'm middle class. If I can't advocate for people who need it, then who else is going to do it? Who else is going to stand up and speak truth to power?
And Linsey, as protests press on here in Minneapolis, DHS fully denies blocking access to legal counsel for anyone in their custody, saying that anyone they've detained is granted full due process rights.
Matt, thank you. In Spain, dozens of people were killed when 2 high-speed trains collided in southern Spain. Crews have been on the scene working to recover bodies from the wreckage and figure out exactly what caused the crash. ABC's Tom Sophie Burridge is in Spain and has the latest.
Tonight, a complex recovery operation is underway as investigators comb the mangled wreckage of 2 high-speed trains that collided in southern Spain. Several rail cars were crushed into a ravine after the end of a train heading north to Madrid, travelling roughly 130 miles per hour, derailed, crossing into the path of another train heading in the opposite direction. At least 40 people confirmed dead. Investigators here fear that number will rise as more are missing. Mayor Rafael Reyes, one of the first on the scene.
You're grateful to the local people who just got down there and helped in any way they could to try and get people off those trains in that horrific situation.
Today, crews meticulously examining that straight section of recently renovated track. A part of it seen in this official photo may have ruptured, but Spain's transport minister saying it's not clear if it was a cause or consequence of the accident.
And Tom Sufi Burridge joins us now from Spain. Tom, what more are investigators saying about this crash?
Yeah, Lindsay, they're saying that the train which initially derailed was relatively new and had passed a safety test just 4 days ago. Now, Spain's transport minister, Lindsay, is calling this accident extremely strange. Lindsay?
Tom Sufi Burridge for us. Thanks so much, Tom. Legendary fashion designer Valentino Garavani has died. His foundation announced the news earlier today on social media. He passed in his home in Rome, surrounded by loved ones. He was remembered for his gowns designed for some of the biggest celebrities in the world, including former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy. He was 93 years old. We have new reporting tonight on the death toll in Iran after those massive protests. Activists estimate roughly 4,000 people have died since the regime started cracking down. And caught up in those protests, a professional basketball player from Detroit who was in the midst of playing for a team based in Iran. She thankfully is back home tonight after a harrowing ordeal leaving Iran. We are so grateful to be joined by Taylor Jones tonight. Thank you so much for your time. I understand that you were able to call home, actually connecting to the Iraqi cell phone tower as you were close to the border. Talk about how you were able to get out of the country.
Yes, that is correct. Correct, actually. So it was, I want to say, close to 2 weeks ago on a Thursday. I was leaving from a coffee shop with the team manager and one of my American teammates. And she had mentioned prior to us leaving that we needed to leave before a certain time because there were protests taking place in our city. And so as we were driving and leaving the coffee shop, I noticed a lot of military. They were aiming at people. There were people running and screaming everywhere. And as I got to the hotel, I was trying to call my mother and tell her what I just witnessed. And my phone was not connecting whatsoever. I tried to call her. I tried to WhatsApp her, text her, and my messages were not going through. So I went down to the hotel lobby to see that if the Wi-Fi worked down there. And of course it didn't. And hours had gone by, and the Americans and myself, we were all talking and we're like, we think the Wi-Fi is no longer working. And so hours of not being able to contact my mom, I had gone to the other American's room who was with me at the time, and her room was on the opposite side of the hotel. And she's like, I've been trying to get in contact with you, but I didn't know your room number. And she's like, I have a bar on my phone, and I think it's because of how close Iraq is. So I was like, okay, well, let me see if I try to turn my phone on and sit in this corner if it'll work. And by the grace of God, it was able to pick up on one bar, and I was able to contact my mom and kind of like let her know what happened and what I witnessed. And she said that she read that it was like a blackout across Iran, and they had cut the Wi-Fi off everywhere, and they also began to cut the phone lines as well.
Have you been able to get in touch with any of your teammates since you returned home?
No, I have not, and I didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye as well.
And we know that the internet also has not come back on in Iran. We're having to rely on stories about what has taken place. What did you see for yourself? What were people that you were talking about in Iran, what were they saying?
To them, this is normal. They were saying that basically in the next 2 weeks that all of this would just die down, and they also wanted me to return. And I was trying to explain to them that although it may be normal for them, that it wasn't normal for us Americans. And they kept trying to reassure me that everything would be okay and that I wouldn't get injured by any means because I was an American. But I had a very uneasy feeling about it.
You're no stranger to sudden evacuations. As I understand, you were also playing in Ukraine back in 2022 ahead of that war breaking out. Talk to us about the lengths that you're willing to go to play the sports that you love.
Oh, absolutely. I feel that I have a calling in life, and basketball is my calling, and it's also my ministry. And I this is something that I've worked hard for forever. And so I feel like challenges and adversity will come, but it's up to me to overcome those challenges, essentially.
Would you go back to Iran?
At this moment, no, I would not.
Taylor Jones, we thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We're so glad that you are safe and sound back at home.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Still ahead, it's the final chapter of Prince Harry's fight against the British tabloids. What's next for the lawsuit? Plus, our Steve Osinsani talks to the youngest freedom rider who's making sure to pass on stories to each upcoming generation.
What do you say to all of those people who wish that the past was just the past?
I'd be very short and just say the truth needs to be told.
And we speak to Reverend Dr. Bernice King on the legacy of her father and healing a country during these divided times. Stay with us. Today on the 41st annual holiday, we honor Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and legacy, and we want to welcome minister, lawyer, and daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Dr. Bernice King. Thank you so much for your time. Your father, Dr. King, was known for practicing nonviolence. You have said that it's a way of life. We've, of course, seen protesters facing off with federal authorities. There's a lot of fear around the country right now, including communities being targeted by ICE agents. What are your thoughts on the current climate of the country?
Well, it's obviously a very tumultuous and disturbing time. Very challenging, and I just want to encourage those who are out protesting that we really lean heavily into my father's teachings during this time, because I think he provides a blueprint and a way to do it so that people can, maintain that nonviolent posture, because it's very difficult when you're facing the violence that they face in protesting. My father and them had to be trained to face the violence that they would face with those that they were challenging the systems of injustice with. And so this is a really important time now that we really need to draw on those teachings.
President Trump recently said of the Civil Rights Act that civil rights led to, quote, white people being very badly treated. As you know, there are white people who believe that they have become the real victims of discrimination in America. Your response?
Well, I think that's wrong information. The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act were put in place to protect communities that have been excluded, who have been marginalized, Black communities and specifically. And so there was never an intent in the sacrifice that my father and all of them made. They were not marching to divide a nation. They were marching to make sure that the nation expanded itself and included everyone on a fair and equal playing field. And so, these provisions were put in place to protect against discrimination. And so, I disagree that white people are harmed, because if you just look at the numbers in corporate America, the majority of the corporate CEOs are white males. When you look around the country, we still have obviously what we call predominantly white colleges and institutions. The majority of those students are white. So if it's really discriminatory and you live in a nation where we're close to maybe 30-some% other than white, and you look at the majority of the universities around this country, that tells the story. So there's not discrimination. If anything that they are missing out on, they're missing out on not because of the Black person, not because of the brown person. It's because they're not able to compete with their own.
In the news today, we saw messages that President Trump essentially linking his desire to acquire Greenland with his disappointment that he was not given the Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, your dad, at just 35 years old, actually did get the Nobel Peace Prize. Do you have a message to President Trump in this time of tumult?
Well, the bottom line is my father received the Nobel Peace Prize because he was leading a nonviolent movement. In nonviolence, your means and ends have to cohere. In other words, the means that you pursue have to be consistent with the outcome that you are trying to get to. And so if your posture, your behavior is not consistent with that, you can't wage war. You can't exert power imperialism and expect to get to a peaceful outcome. That's called negative peace. That means you might have an absence of conflict. So what if conflict stops? At the end of the day, if justice isn't present in a nation, then we haven't really achieved true peace. And so I think that speaks for itself. When you look at what happened with Venezuela, when you look at the threats, a person who practices nonviolence does not have to threaten. You know, a person who believes in peace does not have to try to threaten any other nation.
Reverend Dr. Bernice King, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, the shocking shooting of a judge and his wife, what we know about what happened, and the boss, Bruce Springsteen, weighs into a deeply charged political issue. Stay with us. Welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. A powerful winter storm is bringing wind chills down to the single digits in the Northeast and all the way down to the negative 40s across the Midwest. In Michigan, at least 12 people were injured in a massive chain reaction crash near Grand Rapids. Authorities say an estimated 100 vehicles were involved, including as many as 40 semi-trucks. Fortunately, no deaths were reported, and we're not due for a reprieve just yet. Even more snow could be on the way as the bitter cold reaches all the way down to Florida. A county judge and his wife were shot at their Indiana home, and now police are searching for the gunman. Investigators say Judge David Muir was shot in the hip and his wife Kimberly was shot in the arm. Both are in stable condition at the hospital. Prince Harry was seen walking into a London court today, back for the final chapter in his battle against British tabloids. Tens of millions of dollars are on the line, with several high-profile plaintiffs accusing the Daily Mail's publisher of illegally spying on them. The publisher denies any wrongdoing. In a performance at the Light of Day Festival in New Jersey on Saturday, Bruce Springsteen dedicated his song The Promised Land to the memory of slain Minneapolis woman Renee Good. While on stage, he decried ICE's tactics. And coming up, the youngest freedom rider jailed as a teen now turned civil rights museum guide. His hope from the city that wronged him so many years ago. And it was a big weekend for football. The latest from ESPN NFL insider Dan Graziano. Welcome back, everyone. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Those, of course, the words spoken by the great civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., words that could not be truer for Mississippi native Hezekiah Watkins, known as the youngest freedom rider. He spends his days guiding children through history at a civil rights museum and hopeful that one day he'll receive his own form of justice, an apology. Here's ABC senior national correspondent Steve Osinsami.
This temple of granite in the heart of Mississippi is the first civil rights museum in America, where a state that arguably worked the hardest to keep segregation alive is now curating the stories of great Americans who survived the violence and changed their world.
My voice is the...
From the day they opened nearly 10 years ago, 78-year-old Hezekiah Watkins has worked here as one of their storytellers, guiding mostly school children through a visual maze of Mississippi's difficult past. And it's when he gets to the story of this 13-year-old boy.
This particular guy here is me, my first arrest.
That he wins their full attention.
Do you ever get tired of telling it? Does it ever?
No, I told this story 3 times a day.
3 times a day?
To some kids that was visiting the museum.
Right.
I never get tired of telling the story. The students that come through the museum don't get it. They don't get it at home, and they don't get it in the schoolhouse.
In civil rights history, the 13-year-old version of Hezekiah Watkins is known as the youngest freedom rider. He says it feels like just yesterday when he didn't tell his mother and snuck downtown one Sunday with another black teenager to the segregated Greyhound bus station in Jackson. They were hearing that the freedom riders were coming to town to fight for voting rights, and that there were white ones and brown ones with the black ones. And he wanted to see this for himself.
Well, the day I got arrested, I think I was supposed to have been at church. He and I had been watching them on TV when they was in Montgomery, Alabama. And they became our heroes and sheroes.
He says he was fooling around near the front of the terminal before the Freedom Riders arrived when his friend pushed him in the front door as a joke. But there was nothing funny about what happened next.
He pushed me and decided that red, whites only. But before I could get out of the door, was a police officer. And he asked me, "What you doing in here, boy?" And I looked at him and I said, "My friend out there pushed me in here." Now he got me by my wrists.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I knew, this vehicle pulled up and he led me out and put me in. And they drove, and they drove, and they drove some more.
No one told you you were under arrest?
No.
No one called your mother?
No. They just took me
to prison.
To prison.
Because he stepped foot over the color line, they drove him 2 hours south to the notorious Parchman Prison, the same place where racist authorities would regularly torture freedom riders who were here causing trouble in Mississippi, integrating white waiting rooms and registering black voters. It didn't matter that he was a child. They handcuffed and terrorized the boy and then threw him in a cell on death row. He joined the fight for civil rights that day and would be arrested more than 100 times over the many years of his life.
Being shot at, being beaten, being left on the side for dead, all of these things just messed me up.
Did someone intervene in getting you out of prison?
Believe it or not, it was the president of these United States, John Kennedy, and his brother, Robert. Robert was the U.S. Attorney General at that time.
So how long were you at Parchman Prison?
For 13 days.
Your mother never knew you were in prison this whole time?
Never. It was a reunion of all reunions. And she began running to me.
Yeah.
He took us back to that old Greyhound bus station, now an important place in state history.
This door here on the other side is the door I went in through.
It felt strange walking to the back of the building and back in time to what used to be the entrance for people who look like us.
This is the waiting area that was for colored.
It's just a short walk from the museum.
We'd never dreamed that we could actually have a freedom rider on our staff. You know, Mississippi children learn a lot in the classroom, and they learn a lot when they come and see these exhibits. But nothing can compare to the experience of hearing from Hezekiah that he was a child just like them and was part of changing the course of American history. That's something really powerful.
A few years ago, state prison officials showed him what his old cell block looks like today as he fought back tears. And they put up a sign outside remembering the 300 freedom riders who the guards would burn with their cigarettes. But to this day, he says no one has been held accountable for his torture.
I have never gotten, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying this.
Okay.
You would think now our lawmakers, our city government, county government, although they wasn't there, but you would think they would offer an apology.
But no one has said to you.
But no one have said,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It would mean so much to me.
His wife of 37 years says she feels the same.
Though those around us today did not have a part in it, the humanity in you ought to be that this gentleman deserves an apology, not just from the city of Jackson, the county, but the entire state of Mississippi, because you knew what was taking place. You knew what was being done to young black boys.
You're very proud of him.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. He's a good role model for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren.
After hearing how he shared with us that he wishes someone would say they're sorry, the city of Jackson did just that in a public apology. And they are officially honoring his name. Hezekiah Watkins Street on the west side of town will be a very proud place and a new page in the story he tells every day.
What do you say to all of those people who wish that the past was just the past?
I'd be very short and just say the truth needs to be told. You need to know these things so you won't take life for granted. We cannot forget the past.
An apology, a long time coming. Our thanks to Steve Osinsami for that. And coming up, we sat down with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon for tonight's All Access. What do you think it is about the two of you that makes that bond really stay intact? Plus, ESPN's Dan Graziano is here, and there's a lot to talk about, from the 4 teams vying for a chance at the Super Bowl to the college football final. And Jesse Williams talks about his new documentary, Hoops, Hopes, and Dreams. Welcome back. Tonight we have a sneak peek of our All Access featuring Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and they dish on their lifelong friendship and a whole lot more. What do you think it is about the two of you that makes that bond really stay intact?
I don't know. What do you think it is about the world that people find a friendship so bizarre and strange? Like, feels I mean, you need a lot of friends, but you need good friends in life. I'm sure we all have them. I think what's unusual about it is obviously that, in the same business, who are successful for the same time and have been around doing it for a long time. That is unusual. We got really lucky, I think.
I think we also fed off each other a lot. Like, we both had this kind of crazy dream. We were both pretty obsessed by it and saw that in each other. And that was kind of undergirded it was foundational to the friendship.
And you can watch our All Access with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern and streaming later on Hulu and Disney+. The NFL divisional round is in the books with 4 teams alive and each just 1 win away from the Super Bowl. Joining us now is ESPN NFL insider Dan Graziano. Thank you so much for joining us, Dan. Of course, we had a chaotic weekend in the divisional round. Which game stood out to you?
Oh, the one last night, the Bears and the Rams. I mean, 2 of these 4 games went to overtime, Linsey, and that's always obviously a thrill. But last night, the way it happened with Caleb Williams making that ridiculous throw at the end of regulation to tie it, it's one of those things you almost like, as a neutral observer, I still kind of wish the Bears had won the game so the throw would be remembered for having been part of a win. But I'll never forget it. And it really just portends such amazing things for the Bears and their future. That I think, it's the rare playoff game where both sides, winning and losing, have reason to feel good about what happened.
And sure, what a throw also by that sophomore quarterback. And let's talk about the AFC Championship game between the Broncos and Patriots. Denver lost quarterback Bo Nix due to injury, and now Jarrett Stidham, who's only taken 4 snaps this season, will start. Can he lead them to victory?
I think he can, because when you look at the head coach, Sean Payton, with a week to game plan, I think it's not outside the realm of possibility that they could come up with something that has success. And if it's an ugly kind of game where the Patriots turn it over and it's low scoring, maybe the Broncos can steal one. I think it's a tougher question if they do that to say 2 weeks later they could do it again in the Super Bowl. But I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. The Broncos led the league this year as a team in sacks, and Patriots quarterback Drake May has been sacked 10 times and fumbled 6 times so far in the Patriots' 2 playoff games. So it's not as if New England's coming in, playing their absolute best football of the season. They're playing very well on defense. But if Denver can kind of make the game ugly and keep it close, I do think there's a chance. Yeah.
All right, let's talk NFC Championship game between the LA Rams, Seattle Seahawks. Division rivals split their 2 games this season. Who do you have winning this time?
Boy, I think Seattle has the edge because they're just playing a little bit better right now. But you mentioned it's a division game. These teams know each other extremely well. They played 2 extremely close games against each other this year. And in the second one, Seattle won thanks to a series of sort of very bizarre circumstances, picking up a loose ball in the end zone and being awarded a 2-point conversion, things like that. So I think it's a tough game to pick, a tough game to call. Seattle suffered a significant injury to one of its running backs, Zach Charbonnet, who's going to miss this game, miss the rest of the season. That could be the kind of thing that maybe swings a very close matchup in the other team's favor. But yes, when you have 2 teams that know each other this well, it's kind of an all bets are off situation and makes it almost really a coin flip when it comes to predictions.
We've also had some changes among NFL head coaches. The Giants officially hired John Harbaugh, and the Buffalo Bills fired Sean McDermott today following their playoff exit this weekend. What's your reaction to those moves?
Well, John Harbaugh is a great get for the Giants. On paper, they've been looking for stability at the head coach position for a decade now, since moving on from Tom Coughlin, who won 2 Super Bowls there. So John Harbaugh, obviously established as a successful head coach with the Ravens. I think he'll bring some stability to that position. And ideally, from the standpoint of Giants fans, return them to a level of success they had become accustomed to until, as I mentioned, this past decade. The Sean McDermott firing in Buffalo is a surprise. He'd been there 9 years. He's made the playoffs 8 times. Prior to his arrival in Buffalo, the team had missed the playoffs 17 years in a row. So he obviously built something there that wasn't there before, and they had success. It's just at the point now where if you don't have the ultimate success, getting to and winning the Super Bowl, it seems like you're all of a sudden on shaky ground. So it'll be interesting to see who the Bills turn to. Sean McDermott has built a culture there. They have one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league in Josh Allen. It will be an attractive job for that reason. But Buffalo's starting their coaching search 2 weeks after a lot of other teams did, and you wonder what that means about their ability to attract the top candidate.
Dan, we have 5 seconds left. Who do you have, Indiana, Miami?
Indiana.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us tonight. Finally, as we remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and influence, a new documentary reveals how Dr. King used basketball to inspire others, with former President Barack Obama emulating the idea decades later. Hoops, Hopes, and Dreams, a new sports documentary from Anscape and produced by actor Jesse Williams, highlights how Dr. King and President Obama used teamwork and leadership through basketball to spark change. We had a chance to sit down with Jesse and learn more about the documentary. Take a look.
To know that Martin Luther King could have played their game makes them listen. And then you could talk to them about trying to stop violence in the streets.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he gave us the playbook.
The first time I played basketball with Barack Obama, he says to me, we want to win, but we want their support too. We played every election day for a year.
And joining us now, one of the producers of this documentary, Jesse Williams. Thank you so much for joining us on this MLK Jr. Day. I think you could hear the voices right away. You could know, oh, there's Andy Young. Oh, there's Jamel Hill. And then we saw Reggie, who we haven't seen in a while. So tell us how you got the ball rolling with this doc.
Well, it started actually, our director, Glenn Kino, who's an incredible fine artist and a partner of mine and other ventures. He made this trophy for this gala at the Tommy Smith Gala to honor Ambassador Andrew Young, at which time Andrew Young couldn't resist the temptation to tell Tommy Smith what a great athlete he was in his day, too. And in sharing that, he said, you know, me and Dr. King used to play ball around Atlanta and recruit kids into the movement. I said, what? So Glenn chased him down and said, we'd love to hear more about that story. Could we tell that story? And from then, we were off to the races. And Glenn came back to L.A. and connected with our producer, Michael Ladd, and myself. And we figured out how to form and shape this story of Dr. King showing up in hard-bottom shoes and a suit around the city and the state to connect with young people, folks who maybe wasn't seen in church and wasn't seen on the streets in the movement necessarily, and meeting them where they were and making a connection. And then that started to make us remember how we felt when we saw Obama during the campaign with a basketball, and the close proximity with which you experience that game with others, and kind of anybody at any time can play, and the feeling of taking these men, these intellectual kind of giants, off the black and white photos and their speeches and all their accomplishments, and connect to them through play, and just kind of an even playing field.
So you mentioned black and white photos, but there were no black and white photos, right? If I had been working on this documentary with you, I would have thought, there's no videos, there's no picture.
Dead end.
How are we going to do this?
Yeah, so that's why we went to animation. We said we kind of created like a visual poetry, I like to think. We fill in these gaps with animation, but those animations aren't entirely colored in. It's kind of like we say the book is better than the movie because it leaves room for you to project something into it yourself. So our animation style kind of embodies that, I think, as well. And you get to see the smirk on Dr. King's face as he's crossing somebody up. He's left-handed also, just like Obama.
And what made you, speaking of Obama, decide, you know what, let's have that through line and include his relationship with basketball and also how that related to young people?
I think, as a former history teacher, I know the feeling of trying to make, why is this relevant? Cool story, cool fact, but how does it connect to me today? And we saw pretty quickly that Obama's a figure that people can know and know what he sounds like and see him, and we have plenty of footage of him and the feeling that we had, especially my generation and older. And also now in this time where everybody's plugged into their phones and disconnecting from each other and having a human experience behind a screen, we really wanted to highlight the value of a human exchange with people wherever you are at any point in time, and how it can connect us to those folks who we hope will lead us.
Did the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. have game?
Rumor is he could ball.
Okay.
And I think he's, 5'7" or something? Lefty, but rumor was he had a nice jump shot and he was a really good player.
Jesse Williams, we thank you so much for talking with us and for this documentary. You can catch Hoops, Hopes, and Dreams exclusively on Hulu and Disney Plus now. Disney is the parent company of both Anscape and ABC News. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.